Hello, I am Dr. Jill J. Jaime, pathologist, and I will be discussing on the diseases of the immune system. I would like to start this discussion by showing you how humankind used their knowledge on immunity as early as the 11th century to combat diseases. This image here shows the first form of mucosal vaccination called variolation, when the scabs of smallpox lesions are powdered and blown into the nasal mucosa to mount an immune response against this deadly disease. The normal immune response, for the classic definition of immunity, is protection from infectious pathogens. However, immunity in its broader sense includes host reactions against cancers, tissue transplants, and even self-antigens. Innate immunity refers to intrinsic mechanisms that are poised to react immediately, and thus constitute the first line of defense. It is mediated by cells and molecules that recognize microbes and dead cells and induce rapid protective host reactions. Whereas adaptive immunity consists of mechanisms that are stimulated by exposure to microbes and other foreign substances. It develops more slowly than innate immunity, but it is even more powerful in combating infections. By convention, the term immune response usually refers to adaptive immunity. These are the components of innate immunity: the epithelial barriers that block entry of microbes, the phagocytic cells, the dendritic cells, natural killer cells and other innate lymphoid cells, several plasma proteins including the proteins of complement system. The image here shows how cells get information on abnormal molecules that may damage it, such as microbes and products of cellular injury. On the plasma membrane, we have the toll-like receptors and lectin receptors to detect bacterial products and microbial polysaccharide, whereas node-like receptors are in cytosol. The main functions of innate immunity are as follows. First, the defense, to mount an inflammation or antiviral response, and to stimulate the more powerful adaptive immunity. However, it is nonspecific and exhibits little to no memory. Adaptive immunity can be divided into two arms: the humoral mediated immunity, wherein the B cells are the main cells, which fight extracellular microbes and their toxins, and the cell-mediated immunity, wherein T cells are the main cells. These cells fight intracellular organisms and protein molecules. Now we will discuss the cells of the adaptive immunity. First are the lymphocytes, the T and B lymphocytes. There's no way to differentiate the T cells and B cells morphologically, and you will need special stains for that. Under microscope, they just look like these round cells with round nuclei, clumpy chromatin, and very few cytoplasm. So these cells are not fixed in any site, and it is an advantage. They constantly circulate and promote immune response. The naive lymphocytes are immunologically inexperienced. The effector cells, after activation, they perform the elimination of the microbe, and the memory cells, in which these are cells in state of heightened awareness and reacts rapidly and strongly to microbe in case it returns. This illustration shows the difference between the function of the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes. B cells, when encountered antigens, develop into plasma cells that make antibodies. These antibodies will function in neutralization of the microbe, phagocytosis, and complement activation. So the B cells are pretty simple. The T cells are much more varied. Helper T cells, when presented with antigens, activates macrophages and secrete cytokines to activate both T and B cells. Cytotoxic T cells react to the infected cells by killing it directly. And lastly, the regulatory T cells plays a role in the suppression of the immune response. Another cell of the adaptive immunity is the dendritic cell. It is the most important antigen-presenting cells, or APCs, for initiating T-cell responses against protein antigens. They are usually located under the epithelium, such as the Langerhans cells in the skin. The macrophages are part of the mononuclear phagocyte system and function as APCs in T-cell activation. In cell-mediated immunity, the T cells activate macrophages and enhance their ability to kill ingested microbes. In humoral immunity, macrophages efficiently phagocytose and destroy microbes that are opsonized or coated by IgG or C3p. These are the tissues of the immune system. The primary tissues are the bone marrow, where production of blood cells occur, the thymus, where the T cells develop, whereas the secondary tissues of the immune system are the lymph nodes, the nodular aggregates of lymphoid tissues along the lymphatic system, the spleen, which traps blood-borne antigens, and the cutaneous mucosal lymphoid systems for microbes that breach the epithelia. So I'd like to show you the structure of the lymph node. In the outer cortex are the follicles, which are spherical clusters of B lymphocytes. The lighter center is the germinal center, where B lymphocytes differentiate into plasma cells. Outside of these follicles are the T cells in the paracortical region. The migration of B cells and T cells in different regions of the lymph node is illustrated schematically in this diagram. So how does the T cells recognize the antigens prior to mounting an immune response? These are done through the help of the MHC molecules, or the major histocompatibility complex molecules. The function of MHC molecules is to display peptide fragments of protein antigens for recognition by antigen-specific T cells. MHC1 here HC1 here is found in all nucleated cells and platelets. When a cell is infected, it carries the antigen through its MHC1 molecule to present to the CD8 positive cells, or the cytotoxic T cells. Ultimately, this results to cell-mediated killing. This works usually in antigens that are intracellular. Meanwhile, MHC2 molecule are harbored only by antigen-presenting cells. The APCs phagocytose extracellular pathogens, and with this molecule, they present the antigens to the helper T cells, ultimately resulting to activation of the humoral arm of immunity. This table highlights the major differences between the MHC1 and MHC2. So I want you to remember that all nucleated cells and platelets harbor MHC class 1, while mainly antigen-presenting cells harbor MHC class 2. They also have different genetic locations, HLA-A, HLA-B, HLA-C for MHC class 1, HLA-DP, HLA-DQ, and HLA-DR for MHC class 2. So also, for the T cell interaction, CD8 positive T cells are your cytotoxic lymphocytes. CD4 T cells are your helper T cells. MHC class 1 binds with CD8 T cells, and MHC class 2 binds with CD4 T cells. The cytokines are the messenger molecules of the immune system. These are secreted proteins for cell-cell interactions in the immune system. In the innate immune response, cytokines are produced rapidly after an encounter with microbes and other stimuli. They function to induce inflammation and inhibit virus replication, such as TNF, IL-1, IL-12, type 1 interferons, interferon gamma, and chemokines. In the adaptive immune response, cytokines are produced principally by CD4 lymphocytes activated by antigen and other signals. They function to promote lymphocyte proliferation and differentiation, and to activate effector cells. These are your IL-2, IL-4, IL-5, IL-17, and interferon gamma. In the cell-mediated immunity, this involves immune response without antibodies. These are mediated primarily by T lymphocytes or T cells and targets intracellular pathogens like viruses, some bacteria, and cancer cells. The key players here are your helper T cells, your CD4 cells, which activate other immune cells, and, and most importantly, cytotoxic T cells or your CD8 T cells, which kill the infected or abnormal cells directly. This diagram here shows how cell-mediated immunity works. So when antigen is captured from the tissues, the pathogen-infected cells present antigens on MHC1 molecules, and the cytotoxic T cells recognize and destroy these cells. When the antigen is present on MHC2 in the antigen-presenting cells, the helper T cells recognize these antigens and they secrete cytokines to enhance the immune response. These mechanisms are involved in delayed type hypersensitivity and tumor surveillance. On the other hand, humoral immunity is a branch of the adaptive immune system that defends against extracellular pathogens using antibodies produced by B cells. The key components are the following: the B cells, which are the lymphocytes that recognize antigens and differentiate into plasma cells, the plasma cells, which secrete antibodies, and the antibodies or immunoglobulins, which neutralize pathogens and opsonize for phagocytosis and activate the complement. These are the steps in humoral response. First, the antigen is recognized by B cell receptors, and the B cells are activated with or without the T cell help. These B cells proliferate and differentiate into plasma and memory B cells. Then the antibodies are produced. The IgM is produced first, then it undergoes class switching. So again, these are the roles of the antibodies: neutralization of toxins and viruses, blocking pathogen entry, and opsonization and complement activation. In the T-dependent immunity, humoral response requires T helper cell or CD4 cell involvement to activate the B cells. The key features are the following: it is triggered by protein antigens from pathogens, and the B cells present antigen on MHC2 to T helper cells. The T helper cells activate B cells via CD40 or CD40L interaction and cytokines. The outcomes are the following: class switching from IgM to IgG, IgA, or IgE, affinity maturation via somatic hypermutation, memory B cell formation. The advantage of T cell dependent immunity is that it produces strong, long lasting, and high affinity antibodies. This is essential for long term immunity and vaccines. T independent immunity is the humoral response where B cells are activated without the T cell help. This is triggered by non protein antigens such as polysaccharides and lipopolysaccharides. The antigens cross link the B cell receptors directly. There are two types, the T1 and the T2. The outcomes are mainly IgM production. There is no class switching or memory formation, and the response is weaker and short lived. This is important in early response to encapsulated bacteria, especially in infants and immunocompromised individuals. Now we move on to hypersensitivity diseases. So, did you know that in the past they recommend cigarettes to cure asthma? So, these cigarettes usually harbor stramonium leaves, which are anticholinergic. So, from asthma, let's upgrade to pulmonary cancer. Hypersensitivity reaction are excessive or harmful reaction to antigen. So, this can be elicited by exogenous environmental antigens or endogenous self-antigens. There is an imbalance between the effector mechanisms of immune responses and the control mechanisms that serve to limit such responses. There is an inheritance of particular susceptibility genes. The effector mechanisms are poorly controlled, misdirected, or excessive. We will first discuss the type 1 hypersensitivity reaction or the immediate hypersensitivity. This is a rapid immunologic reaction occurring within minutes after combination of an antigen with antibody bound to mast cells in person previously sensitized to antigen. This is mediated by Th2 cells, IgE antibodies, and mast cells. It may be localized or systemic. Examples of your localized type 1 hypersensitivity reaction are your bee sting, allergic rhinitis, and asthma. Systemic anaphylaxis is characterized by vascular shock, widespread edema, and bronchospasm. Even if with small dose of antigen, the effect could be life-threatening. It may be due to parenteral introduction of drug or any antigen like hormones or peanuts and shellfish. Type 1 hypersensitivity reaction occurs in two phases. First is the immediate reaction or the initial reaction, which occurs less than an hour after the allergen exposure. So usually the clinical manifestations are severe. The, the patient may have vasodilation, vascular leakage, and smooth muscle spasm. After this, the patient may undergo late phase, in which eosinophils and neutrophils as well as basophils, monocytes, and CD4 cells may infiltrate. In this sequence of type 1 allergic reaction, the T cells, the dendritic cells rather, capture the antigen and presents it to the naive T cells, which transforms to the Th2 cells. These Th2 cells activate eosinophils and produce cytokines that attract even more eosinophils and Th2 cells. For the B cells, these are stimulated for isotype switching to IgE. So they produce lots of IgE and the IgE binds to Fc receptors of the mast cells. Mast cells are bone marrow-derived cells that are widely distributed in the tissues. When a mast cell is armed with IgE antibodies previously produced in response to an antigen, and then it is exposed to the same antigen, the cell is activated, leading to the release of an arsenal of powerful mediators that are responsible for immediate hypersensitivity reaction. In the late phase reaction, eosinophils are activated even without re-exposure to the antigen because of the secreted chemokines. Eosinophils also contain large amounts of proteins called galectin 10, which undergoes crystallization after eosinophil activation to form charcot-Leyden crystals. These crystals are detected in patients with asthma. Several factors are recognized to play a role in the development of allergies. First is the susceptibility to allergies is genetically determined. Atopy is the propensity to develop allergy. There are also environmental factors such as exposure to pollutants. And there is an also noted increase in incidence in developed countries. Hygiene hypothesis shows that early childhood and even prenatal exposure to environmental, including microbial antigens, educates the immune system in such a way that subsequent pathologic responses against common allergens are prevented. Type 2 antibody-mediated hypersensitivity is caused by antibodies reacting with antigen presenting on cell surface or in extracellular matrix. These are the mechanisms of type 2 hypersensitivity. The, First, the opsonization and phagocytosis, which is responsible for depletion of cells coated with antibodies and activate the complement pathway. The complement and Fc receptor mediated inflammation, in which the attack complex is formed, and the antibody-mediated cellular dysfunction, which is mediated by monocytes, neutrophils, eosinophils, and NK cells. These illustrate the above mechanisms. One example of your type 2 hypersensitivity is myasthenia gravis. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disease where the immune system mistakenly attacks the neuromuscular junction. So this is your normal neuromuscular junction. The neuron secretes acetylcholine, and this acetylcholine is received by acetylcholine receptors found in the muscle. This would lead to normal transmission. Without enough functional receptors, since it is blocked by antibodies, the nerve signals cannot effectively reach the muscles. This failure results in progressive weakness as muscles are used repeatedly. The muscle weakness fluctuates and it is more prominent in the afternoon or evening after the prolonged activity. In many adults with myasthenia gravis, the thymus gland is also abnormally enlarged and may develop tumors called thymomas. It is believed that the thymus gland gives incorrect instructions to the immune cells, causing the production of antibodies that block or destroy acetylcholine receptors at the nerve muscle junction. Thereby, this interferes with muscle contraction. Surgical removal of the gland or thymectomy is a common and effective treatment for myasthenia gravis. Another example is Graves' disease, in which this is an autoimmune condition where the immune system mistakenly produces autoantibodies, particularly thyroid-stimulating immunoglobulins that bind and activate the stimulating hormone receptors on the thyroid gland. This activation continuously stimulates the thyroid to produce excess thyroid hormones such as T3 and T4, which lead to hyperthyroidism and an enlarged thyroid. The thyroid stimulating hormone receptor is also found in the orbital fat and connective tissue and is also a target for autoimmune assault. The inflammation results to the deposition of collagen and glycosaminoglycans in the muscles, which leads to subsequent enlargement and fibrosis, hence leading to the characteristic exophthalmos in Graves' ophthalmopathy. These are the other examples of type 2 hypersensitivity. I want you to read and familiarize yourself with the mechanisms of the disease because some of these appear in the board examinations. Moving on to type 3 immune complex mediated hypersensitivity. This hypersensitivity reaction occurs when complexes of antigens and immunoglobulin G antibodies produce tissue damage, mainly by eliciting inflammation at the sites of deposition. The antigens may be foreign or self-antigens, and the site of deposition is typically in the blood vessels or, less frequently, in situ where the antigens are. Serum sickness is the prototype of a systemic immune complex disease. It was once a frequent sequela to the administration of large amounts of protein of foreign serum, such as serum from immunized horses used for protection against diphtheria. So this diagram shows how type 3 hypersensitivity reaction is formed. So, for example, you have antigens in the circulation. This may be foreign, this may be self-antigens, and your body produced antibody against these antigens. Immune complexes are formed, and these immune complexes deposit in the blood vessel. This immune complex formed and deposit in your blood vessel, and they elicit inflammation and tissue injury. So I want you also to take note how it is different from your type 2 hypersensitivity reaction, in which the antigens are present in your um, own cells. These are the examples of immune complex mediated diseases. First and foremost is the SLE, or systemic lupus erythematosus, which we will discuss later in the autoimmune disorders. And here, post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis, in which a streptococcal cell wall antigens, a foreign antigen, may be planted in the glomerular basement membrane. Others are polyarteritis nodosa, reactive arthritis, serum sickness, and Arthus reaction. Lastly, type 4 or T cell mediated hypersensitivity reaction. This is initiated by antigen activated or sensitized T lymphocytes, including CD4 positive and CD8 positive T cells. This is induced by environmental and self antigens in chronic inflammatory diseases. An example of which is the tuberculin reaction. So the illustration shows the mechanisms of T cell mediated or type 4 hypersensitivity reactions. In CD4 positive Th1 and Th17 cells respond to tissue antigens by secreting cytokines that recruit leukocytes and activate phagocytes, leading to tissue injury. In CD8, cytotoxic cells directly kill the tissue cells. Both Th1 and Th17 contribute to organ-specific diseases in which chronic inflammation is a prominent aspect of the pathology. So these are the examples of T-cell mediated diseases. So again, the first example is our tuberculin antigen reaction, and another example is the poison ivy rash in the skin. So under the microscope, we will see lots and lots of lymphocytes infiltrating and causing this T-cell mediated disease. Now that we've finished on the discussion of the hypersensitivity reaction, we will go to the autoimmune diseases. And the poster disease for the autoimmune diseases is the systemic lupus erythematosus. Now, lupus is not specific to SLE. So historically, it was used to describe skin lesions that looks like a wolf has eaten or bitten the, the skin. So what are the characteristics of autoimmune diseases? Autoimmune diseases result from loss of self-tolerance and have varied clinical manifestations. They could be organ-specific or systemic, and they tend to have chronic and progressive with episodes of relapses and remissions. For T and B lymphocytes, central tolerance is established when immature self-reactive T cells and B lymphocyte clones that recognize self-antigens during their maturation in the central lymphoid organs are killed and rendered harmless. This occurs in the thymus for the lymphocytes and the bone marrow for B lymphocytes. However, this system is imperfect and some may escape into peripheral circulation. Peripheral tolerance is established by these several mechanisms. Hence, in a nutshell, the underlying cause of autoimmune diseases is the failure of tolerance, which allows response to develop against self-antigens. Aside from susceptibility genes, infections have postulated roles in the development of autoimmunity. Infections may promote activation of self-reactive lymphocytes by inducing the expression of co-stimulators or microbial antigens which may mimic antigens and activate self-reactive lymphocytes as a cross-reaction. One notable example of molecular mimicry is rheumatic heart disease, in which antibodies against streptococcal proteins cross-react with myocardial proteins and cause myocarditis. This table here shows the diseases mediated by antibodies and those that are mediated by T cells. The diseases are also categorized if they are organ-specific or systemic. There are also diseases that are postulated to be autoimmune, such as your IBD, primary biliary cholangitis, and autoimmune hepatitis. Now we discuss systemic lupus erythematosus. This is an autoimmune disease involving multiple organs characterized by a vast array of autoantibodies, particularly the antinuclear antibodies or the ANAs, in which injury is caused mainly by deposition of of immune complexes and binding of antibodies to various cells and tissues. This is a very heterogeneous presentation, and patients may present with any number of clinical features. One such example is the butterfly rash or the malar rash, which is a common facial skin rash seen in systemic lupus erythematosus. These affect the cheeks and the bridge of the nose in a butterfly shape, though it can also appear on other sun-exposed areas of the body. This red, sometimes raised or scaly rash can be a sign of a lupus flare and is often worsened by sunlight exposure. While it is a criterion for SLE, it can also occur in other types of lupus. The SLIC and or Systemic Lupus International Collaborating Clinics classification criteria for systemic lupus erythematosus outlines the requirements and specific clinical and immunological criteria used for classifying SLE. In the workup for autoimmune diseases, the usual first step is the determination of anti-nuclear antibodies or ANA, but this is non-specific, and this can also be positive in other diseases that are not autoimmune. The next step in the workup would be for more specific antibodies such as the anti-dsDNA or anti-Smith for SLE. Basically, ANA is a sensitive test, about 98 to 99% sensitivity, while anti-dsDNA or anti-Smith are specific tests. The most widely used method for detecting ANAs is an indirect immunofluorescence assay or IFA, in which the patient's serum is layered on cultured HEP2 cells and binding is detected with an anti-immunoglobulin antibody labeled with a fluoroprobe. This test has identified antibodies that bind to over 200 antigens in the nucleus, the nucleolus, cytoplasm, and mitotic apparatus. These are the examples of the staining patterns of the anti-nuclear antibodies. So, anti-dsDNA, they would have homogeneous appearance. The anti-U3RNP, nucleolar appearance. So, in the cells, they are centralized in the nucleus. And they will not stain the whole nucleus because they target the nucleus. The anti-Smith antibody, which has a coarse appearance. The anti-CENPA, or the centromere, and the anti-GP120, which stains the nuclear envelope. Histologically, the involved areas show vacuolar degeneration of the basal layer of the epidermis. In the epidermis, there is a variable edema and perivascular inflammation here. This results to the characteristic erythema in SLE. Immunofluorescence microscopy also show deposition of immunoglobulin and complement along the dermoepidermal junction, which may also be present in uninvolved skin. This finding is not specific for SLE and is sometimes seen in scleroderma or dermatomyositis. In cardiovascular system, valvular anomalies, primarily of the mitral and aortic valves, manifest as diffuse leaflet thickening that may be associated with dysfunction. So this is called Liebman-Sachs endocarditis, and it has a particular pattern which can be recognizable from the rheumatic heart disease or the infective endocarditis types. Next is the Sjogren's syndrome, which is characterized by dry eyes and dry mouth. This results from immunologically mediated destruction of the lacrimal and salivary glands. SICAD syndrome is characterized by decrease in tears and saliva as a result of lymphocytic infiltration and fibrosis of the lacrimal and salivary glands. So because of this constant lymphocytic infiltration and inflammation, these patients are more prone to developing lymphoma. 90% of the patients have antibodies against SSA and SSB. or the raw La antigens. In this picture, the salivary glands are enlarged and there is an intense lymphocytic and plasma cell infiltration with ductal hyperplasia. This, this one, the epithelium component in the salivary glands. So again, because of the constant stimulation of the lymphocytes and the inflammation, these patients are prone to developing lymphomas. Next, systemic sclerosis or scleroderma. This is characterized by chronic inflammation thought to be the result of autoimmunity. They cause widespread damage to small blood vessels and progressive interstitial and perivascular fibrosis in the skin and multiple organs. So, the antibodies are against DNA topoisomerase 1 or anti-SCL70, which is highly specific. There are two major categories: the diffuse scleroderma, which is characterized by widespread skin involvement at onset with rapid progression and early visceral involvement. So this is a worse prognosis. And we also have the limited scleroderma, in which the skin involvement is confined to the fingers, the forearms, and the face. Visceral involvement occurs late, hence the clinical course is generally benign. So this is an example of the scleroderma. This is the normal skin and the biopsy from the patient with systemic sclerosis. Note that there is an extensive deposition of dense collagen in the dermis with virtual absence of appendages. The extensive subcutaneous fibrosis has virtually immobilized fingers, creating a claw-like flexion deformity. The loss of blood supply also has led to cutaneous ulcerations. A major barrier to transplantation is the process of rejection, in which the recipient's immune system recognizes the graft as being foreign and attacks it. These are the mechanisms of tissue transplant rejection. The major antigenic differences between a donor and recipient that result in rejection of transplants are in HLA alleles. These are encoded by MHC genes on chromosome 6. These function to present antigens to T cells, which are critical for self or non-self recognition. In transplantation, when there is a donor HLA mismatch, the donor antigen is recognized as foreign. This activates T lymphocytes and causes graft rejection. Hence, HLA matching, especially HLA-A, HLA-B, HLA-DR, improves graft survival. Now we will discuss the patterns of rejection. For the patterns of rejection, the main model used here are the kidney allografts, but similar changes are seen in other organs. The first pattern is the hyperacute rejection. This is mediated by preformed antibodies specific for antigens on graft endothelial cells. IgM antibodies against blood group antigens or allogenic MHC molecules may be induced by prior exposure of the organ recipient to allogenic cells through blood transfusion, pregnancy, or transplantation of other organ. This is now rare because of cross-matching. So immediately after the graft is implanted and blood flow is restored, the antibodies bind to the antigens on the graft vascular endothelium and activate the complement system. This leads to endothelial injury, thrombosis, and ischemic necrosis of the graft. The arterioles and arteries exhibit fibrinoid necrosis of their walls and narrowing or complete occlusion of their lumens by thrombi. Neutrophils rapidly accumulate within arterioles, glomeruli, and peritubular capillaries. Acute cellular rejection occurs within days or weeks after transplantation, and it is a principal cause of early graft failure. This may appear suddenly much later after transplantation if immunosuppression is tapered or terminated. CD8 positive cytotoxic T lymphocytes may directly destroy the graft cells, or CD4 cells secrete cytokines and induce inflammation, which damages the graft. So in this picture, morphologically, this targets the interstitium and the tubules and sometimes the blood vessels too, having this rejection vasculitis in a kidney graft. Next pattern is acute humoral rejection. This also occurs within days or weeks after transplantation and is also a principal cause of early graft failure. The antibodies bind to vascular endothelium and activate complement cascade via the classical pathway. This damages the glomeruli and small blood vessels. In this example, capillaritis in peritubular capillaries is shown in this kidney graft. And when stained for CD4 deposition, we see here C4D deposition in peritubular capillaries and glomerulus. Lastly, chronic rejection. This is often indolent and occurs over months or years, leading to progressive loss of graft function. T cells that react against graft alloantigens and secrete cytokines, which stimulate the proliferation and activities of fibroblasts and vascular smooth muscle cells in the graft. This results to interstitial fibrosis and gradual narrowing of graft blood vessels or graft arteriosclerosis. This is refractory to most therapies and is becoming the principal cause of graft failure. In chronic rejection, antigen-presenting cells present the graft antigens to the CD4 T cells, and this leads to production of cytokines and chronic inflammation in the vessel wall. So the intimal smooth muscle proliferates, leading to vessel occlusion. So this manifests as graft arteriosclerosis or transplant glomerulopathy, in which the glomerulus shows inflammatory cells within the capillary loops or glomerulitis, accumulation of the mesangial matrix here, and the duplication of capillary basement membrane. Moving on to graft versus host disease or GVHD. This is unique to hematopoietic stem cell transplant in the treatment of hematologic diseases. Rarely, it may occur following the transplantation of solid organs rich in lymphoid cells, such as the liver, or transfusion of unirradiated blood. The mechanism, it is the donor against the recipient. The immunocompetent T cells present in the donor inoculum recognize the recipient's HLA antigens as foreign and reacts against them. So this is different from the reactions we've discussed earlier, because it is in this reaction the donor is against the recipient. This may be acute or chronic, and to prevent this, HLA matching using precise DNA sequencing based methods for molecular typing of HLA alleles are done. And so we're on the last topic, the immunodeficiency diseases. So here in the image is David Vetter, born in 1971 with severe combined immunodeficiency disease. So he is known to be the bubble boy or the boy in the bubble because he is abnormally susceptible to pathogens that mild infections could be fatal. Throughout his life, he lived in this sterile environment containment system as part of his management. Immunodeficiency diseases can be categorized into primary or secondary. Primary immunodeficiency diseases are caused by single gene defects. These are most These are most commonly detected in infancy between the 6 months and 2 years of life. So why 6 months? Because this is the time when the antibody from the mother wanes. The telltale sign being the susceptibility to recurrent infections. The secondary or acquired immunodeficiency diseases may arise as complications of cancers, infections, or malnutrition, or side effects of immunosuppression, irritation, or chemotherapy for cancer, graft rejection, and other diseases. Primary immunodeficiencies can affect the innate or the adaptive immunity. So defects in innate immunity are the following: defects in lymphocyte function, examples of which are the chronic granulomatous disease, in which there is a defective NADPH oxidase which causes impaired killing of catalase-positive organisms. Leukocyte adhesion deficiency or LAD, impaired neutrophil migration or adhesion causes recurrent bacterial infections, delayed wound healing, but there is no pause. In Chediak-Higashi syndrome, characterized by these giant granules in the neutrophils, there is a lysosomal trafficking defect which causes the giant granules in neutrophils, recurrent infections, albinism, and neuropathy. In NK cell deficiency, these patients are more prone to severe viral infections. Deficiencies may also affect the complement system. C1q, C2, C4 deficiencies affect the classical pathway, and the presentation is SLE-like autoimmune disease. C3 deficiency, there is a defect in all complement function, and this is severe and recurrent pyogenic infections usually kill the patients. C5 to C9 deficiency, because this is the membrane attack complex, the patient is more prone to recurrent Neisseria infections. In C1 esterase inhibitor deficiency, hereditary angioedema is manifested because of the increased prednisone. The defects in adaptive immunity is better understood through the principal pathways of lymphocyte development and the blocks in this pathway in selected primary immune deficiency diseases. So the lymphocyte come from the pluripotent stem cell here, and this matures to the common myeloid to lymphoid progenitor. So this cell will become the pro B cell or the pro T cell. So in the pro T cell, when there is a defect in the ADA enzyme, it will cause SID or severe combined immunodeficiency syndrome. Likewise, down the line, there are several blocks that we will discuss later. This also happens for your B cell production. Now we will discuss severe combined immunodeficiency, in which defects in both tumoral and cell-mediated immune responses occur. These affect infants, and they present with prominent thrush or oral candidiasis, extensive diaper rash, and failure to thrive. Without hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, death occurs within the first year of life. So, SID may be X-linked or autosomal recessive. X-linked SID or X-linked recessive SID, the most common gene affected is IL-2RG, and recurrent bacterial, viral, fungal infections, chronic diarrhea, and failure to thrive are the typical features. Again, treatment is stem cell transplant. On the other hand, autosomal recessive SID, the gene mostly affected is ADA or the adenosine deaminase enzyme. Others are the JAK3 and RAG1 or RAG2. Same as X-linked, this may also have additional systemic features in ADA deficiency, such as skeletal, hepatic, and neurologic manifestations. Again, hematopoietic stem cell transplant is the treatment, but enzyme replacement therapy for ADA may also be done. On the B cell production, there is X-linked Bruton agamaglobulinemia, in which the B cell precursors fail to develop into mature B cells. This is X-linked recessive, hence it affects the males. There is a BTK gene mutation which causes block maturation of pre-B cells into mature B cells. Hence, there are no plasma cells, which will cause all of the immunoglobulins to be decreased. So we don't have IgG, IgA, IgM, IgE, or IgD. The clinical features are as follows. Onset after 6 months of life, again when the maternal Ig wanes, and small or absent tonsils or lymph nodes. So here, your mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue in the appendix has no plasma cells and no germinal centers. Patients may also have chronic Giardia infections, and the treatment is lifelong IVIG replacement. Patients should also avoid live vaccines because they can't mount immune response against this live vaccine. It may be more troublesome for them or more harmful for them. DiGeorge syndrome or thymic hypoplasia causes T cell deficiency that results from failure of development of the thymus. This is this occurs when the third and fourth pharyngeal pouches do not develop normally, causing thymus hypoplasia, tetany due to the lack of parathyroid and congenital heart defects. So, the mnemonic for the DiGeorge syndrome is Catch-22, cardiac defects, abnormal chassis, thymic aplasia, cleft palate, hypocalcemia, and since the the mutation occurs in chromosome 22, so Catch-22. 90% have small germline deletion that maps to chromosome 22q11. The T cell zones are depleted and paracortical areas of the lymph nodes and the periarteriolar sheaths of the spleen are devoid of this. Next, hyper-IgM syndrome. This affect These patients have IgM antibodies but are deficient in IgG, IgA, and IgE. So mature B cells are present, but they are incapable of Ig class switching and affinity maturation. This may be because of an intrinsic B cell defect or a helper T cell defect. 70% have mutations in the gene encoding CD40L located in XQ26 that interfere with CD4 positive helper T cell function. They may have recurrent pyogenic infections because the level of opsonizing IgG antibodies is low. Common variable immunodeficiency is the most common symptomatic primary immunodeficiency in which the onset is in late childhood or adulthood. There is an impaired B cell differentiation to plasma cells, so there are decreased levels of plasma cells. And there is low IgG or IgA, and may also have low IgM because of the defective antibody production. This is often associated with defective T cell helper cells. Normal B cell numbers but dysfunctional, and hence the decrease in serum immunoglobulins. There is also a poor vaccine response. In selective IgA deficiency, there is an impaired differentiation of naive B lymphocytes to IgA producing plasma cells. Most are asymptomatic because IgA is the major antibody in mucosal secretions. Mucosal defenses are weakened and infections occur in the respiratory, gastrointestinal, and urogenital tracts. The patients may have severe fatal anaphylactic reactions when transfused with blood containing normal IgA. This is a summary of the defects of in the immune system, the examples, and the usual infections. Just helpful in synthesizing what we have learned today. Just some mnemonics. And lastly, the secondary immunodeficiencies and the mechanism. So HIV, human immunodeficiency virus infection, causes depletion of CD4 helper T cells. Irradiation and chemotherapy treatments for cancer cause reduced leukocyte production. Involvement of bone marrow cancers causes reduced leukocyte production. Protein calorie malnutrition causes metabolic derangements, which inhibit lymphocyte maturation and function. And the removal of the spleen causes decreased phagocytosis of blood-borne microbes. An important cause of secondary immunodeficiency disorder is the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which is caused by HIV-1 from the a retrovirus from the lentivirus family. The transmission occurs via sexual contact, blood products, IV drug use, or vertical from mother to child. In the pathophysiology of this disease, the HIV infects CD4 positive T cells, macrophages, dendritic cells via GP120 binding to CD4 positive CCR5 or CXCR4. This causes progressive CD4 positive T cell depletion and impaired cell mediated immunity. The chronic immune activation and viral replication causes the immune exhaustion. In AIDS, the lymph nodes may have follicular hyperplasia until they are depleted or burnt out nodes. In CNS, microglial nodules or encephalitis may occur, and opportunistic infections and neoplasms usually kill the patient. So they have three clinical stages. First, the acute HIV syndrome, in which fever, lymphadenopathy, and pharyngitis occur. So this is very non-specific. It's like mononucleosis. There is also a latent phase in which the patient may have asymptomatic or persistent generalized lymphadenopathy. AIDS occur when the CD4 counts are below 200 per microliter. This is when opportunistic infections set, such as your pneumonia, your CMV infection, TB, candida, and the tumors such as Kaposi sarcoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and cervical cancer. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening up to this point. I hope we will meet face to face sometime. And for questions, you may email me at jiljj.jaime@gmail.com. Thank you.